The roar of a powerful engine shattered the midnight silence over Clearwater Lake. A vintage speedboat sliced through the water like a knife, moonlight bouncing off its polished chrome. But here's the kicker. Behind the wheel wasn't me, the guy who spent months restoring that beauty. Nope. It was Karen, the HOA president, wearing a purple bathrobe, hair wild, yelling something about showing everyone who's really in charge. Red and blue lights suddenly flickered along the shore as sheriff boats converged on her. Yeah, that happened, and this is how my HOA president stole my speedboat and got caught in the most spectacular way imaginable. Let me back up a sec. I'm Jake Morrison. For 6 months straight, every weekend without fail, I was elbow deep in bringing my late dad's 1972 Chris Craft Commander back to life. That boat wasn't just wood and metal to me, it was a connection to my dad, who passed away 2 years ago. The mahogany hull gleamed after countless hours of sanding and varnishing, and the engine purred like a satisfied cat once I rebuilt it piece by piece. I live in Riverside Estates, a lakeside community that sounds idyllic until you realize it's ruled by the most controlling HOA you'll ever meet. At the helm of this little dictatorship was Karen Peton, a 50-something woman who treated HOA presidency like a throne. She had this uncanny knack for inventing violations out of thin air. Your grass was too long, or suspiciously perfect, your mailbox the wrong shade of beige, your car parked an inch too far from the curb. When I moved in 3 years ago, Karen started circling like a shark. First, it was complaints about oil stains from my garage work. Then, noise complaints about power tools during hours they were actually allowed. But when I started restoring my dad's boat, she went into overdrive. Every week brought a fresh violation notice. The boat was an eyesore, improperly stored, a threat to the neighborhood's architectural harmony. The funny thing? I double-checked every single HOA rule before starting. Boats were allowed, as long as they were kept in garages or on private docks. Mine sat perfectly legal on my dock behind the house. Didn't matter. Karen cared about control, not facts. She began showing up at random hours, snapping photos from the street, measuring distances from my dock to property lines, even claiming my boat's color wasn't approved. Which was absurd since the rules never mentioned boat colors. I tried to be reasonable, going to HOA meetings where Karen would spend 20 minutes grilling me about violations while actual neighborhood problems got seconds of attention. I complied with every demand, even invited her to see the restoration progress. Instead of understanding, she fined me $300 for having supplies visible from the lake. Then came the test run. First time out on the water, and Karen was waiting for me when I got back. Sweet as poison. She told me I needed special permission for motorized watercraft, a rule she literally made up on the spot. When I showed her the bylaws saying no such thing existed, her face went an interesting shade of purple as she stormed off, muttering about emergency board meetings and rule changes. Things got weirder after that. Karen started showing up everywhere, jogging past my house at odd hours, always slowing to stare at the boat. She lurked on Marina's social media, posting passive-aggressive comments about property values every time someone shared a photo of my boat. Neighbors told me she'd been asking odd questions about the boat's history and if my dad had proper paperwork for it. Then one morning changed everything. I woke early, coffee in hand, ready for a sunrise cruise, only to find the boat gone. Not just moved or tampered with, completely missing. The dock lines were neatly coiled, no signs of struggle or forced entry, like it vanished into thin air. I called 911, and Deputy Rodriguez showed up quick, taking everything seriously once I explained the harassment history. Why neighbor Bill Patterson jogged over with his phone, security camera footage in hand. At 2:47 a.m., a figure in dark clothes approached my dock from the water side, used a key to unlock the boat's cabin, and started the engine like a pro. Then the figure turned toward the camera. Even in grainy night footage, that unmistakable bob haircut and righteous posture made it clear. It was Karen. Deputy Rodriguez's eyes widened. Backup was called, and within minutes, we learned Karen somehow got a copy of my boat key. She convinced a locksmith she was my wife and needed a spare for our anniversary surprise. The locksmith's document showed Karen's forged signature. It was nuts. Then the radio crackled. Reports from the next lake community, Sunset Cove, of a woman in a bathrobe recklessly driving a vintage speedboat, screaming about showing real power and nearly hitting fishing boats. Description matched Karen to a T. I jumped into Deputy Rodriguez's car, and we sped to the public launch. Marine patrol boats were already out, their searchlights crisscrossing the water. Then we saw her, Karen, standing up on the boat, bathrobe billowing behind her like some demented superhero cape, howling like she owned the place. Marine patrol tried to get her to stop with loudspeakers, but Karen just laughed, flooring it. She had zero clue how to handle that much power, bouncing off waves, nearly airborne, weaving dangerously close to other boats. Then Sheriff Thompson showed up in the newest patrol boat, took over the chase personally, booming warnings across the water. For a moment, it seemed she might comply, slowing down, turning toward the sheriff. But then she screamed that as HOA president, she had the right to confiscate property violating regulations, claiming she was taking the boat to an impound lot. Yeah, impound lots run by HOAs, total nonsense. The sheriff calmly told her she was under arrest for grand theft auto, reckless endangerment, and a handful of other charges. The chase ended when Karen tried a sharp turn she couldn't manage. The engine sputtered and died, leaving her floating, sputtering in the water. She kept ranting about her authority as marine patrol boats closed in. Tried to restart the engine, but my dad had installed a hidden kill switch I activated remotely the moment Deputy Rodriguez confirmed the theft. Seeing Karen handcuffed on my family's boat, soaked and shouting, was a moment I'll never forget. She demanded to speak to the sheriff's manager, not realizing Sheriff Thompson was the top law enforcement officer in the county. As they hauled her away, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "This isn't over." The next morning's arraignment was brutal. The judge wasn't buying Karen's claim that HOA presidents had seizure powers. She faced grand theft, burglary, breaking and entering, reckless endangerment, and operating a watercraft while intoxicated. Yes, she'd apparently been drinking to build courage for her midnight heist. Security footage from multiple angles showed she stalked my property for days, photographing registration numbers, studying my routine, even practicing on similar boats at a rental. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment stunt. It was a planned theft fueled by pathological jealousy and power abuse. During trial, the truth came out. Karen grew up on the lake, knew my dad, and apparently had a high school crush on him. Seeing his boat restored triggered something deeply unstable. She convinced herself the boat was hers, reclaiming what belonged to her. A prosecution psychologist testified about her narcissistic personality disorder, how her HOA role fed her delusions of grandeur. Meanwhile, the HOA board held an emergency meeting, packed with residents tired of her reign. They shared stories of arbitrary fines, fabricated violations, and personal vendettas. The vote was unanimous. Karen was removed and banned from holding any future board positions. Local news picked up the story. Karen became the poster child for HOA overreach gone wrong. Her professional life crumbled just as fast. The real estate firm she worked for put her on administrative leave the day after her arrest, then terminated her when charges were filed. Her license was suspended pending investigation, ending her career. I filed a civil lawsuit, not just for theft, but months of harassment, defamation, and emotional distress. The evidence was airtight. Stalking footage, forged locksmith papers, an open and shut case. Karen had to liquidate her retirement savings to settle. On sentencing day, the courtroom was packed with neighbors. Karen stood before the judge, trying to look respectable in a suit, but the weight of her actions was crushing. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, $50,000 in fines, and full restitution for legal fees and boat damages. When the sentence was read, Karen broke down, sobbing, wailing about how unfair it was. Her lawyer practically carried her out as she lamented losing everything. So here I am, sitting by the lake, watching my restored boat gleam in the sunlight, finally free. Karen's theft was more than just a crime. It was a symptom of a toxic power structure gone too far, a reminder of how far some will go when blinded by control and jealousy. Now, here's what I want to know. What do you think? Should HOA presidents have that kind of power? Where's the line between protecting a neighborhood and becoming a tyrant? Drop your thoughts below. I'm curious how you'd handle a Karen in your community. Because, honestly, this story, it's far from over.